Hello, welcome back to the Forgetful Scholar, and this week we're going to chat about books. 2 books. So last week I did a library haul. I visited my local library, so I read 2 of those books this week. And the first book I want to talk about is Sanctuary of the Shadow. I believe it's Elemental Emergency book, or Elemental Emergence book 1 by Aurora Ascher, and this is the one with the sprayed edges. So at first I thought this was a YA book because I wasn't sure because it was in the new arrival section, you know. Turns out it is romantic fantasy, or romantasy, I guess they call it now. You know, fine. Back in my day, that would just been called a paranormal romance, but okay, sure. Dog scratching at the door. And didn't fantasy always have like a romantic subplot? You know, not get into the weeds. Romantasy, it's fine. So, as you guys know, fantasy is not my genre. I'm trying to get more into it. There's a few that I enjoy from that, you know, category. I'm mostly a romance and mystery reader, right? So, or cozy mystery specifically reader. So, I'm trying to broaden my horizons. I'm trying. You know, that being said, I will give this book 3 stars. So if you like romantasy, definitely check this book out because it's not my genre, but I didn't hate it. I liked it. There are a few parts that I really liked, you know, so I'm going to get to it. I'm going to try to do a non-spoilerly recap because it just came out. Just a couple months ago, in fact. Yeah, it just came out in January, so this is still a pretty new book, right? So this takes place in the fantasy world, obviously. I will say, the first chapter, which is like 3 to 4 pages, I got it. I got the world building, I got the magic structure, I got the racial tensions, you know, like I got... Harrow is the heroine of this book. I got, you know, her friendship with Mal, who I really liked. I really like Mal. I think the next book is about her. She's in the circus, and the ringmaster, got that he's pretty intimidating. Like, I got all that, you know? So I was like, oh, that's really good, you know, world building. Like, I didn't feel like I was being lectured to or lore dumped, which I really, really appreciated. Because, you know, that happens in books. It can happen in any genre, right? So, I liked Harrow. There's some part, like in the middle, I was just like, where did your personality go? But okay. And Wrath, a little bit of spoiler, the guy's name is Wrath, or that's the name, well, he don't remember anything, but that you know from the synopsis. So he has amnesia. I liked him. I liked his internal struggle. I thought their romance was super cute. I loved the ending. There was one point where she's like scared of him, and then she's like, but, which kind of reminded me of Michelle Mills, who does a lot of monster romances. And I guess this could be a monster romance as well. But with Michelle Mills books, you know she's having fun. It's kind of a joke, and you're in on the joke. This author really took it seriously. So Harrow was like frightened of him at first, but then she's like, ooh, we're connected though. You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay. So I liked all that. And the ending was cute. You know, I liked all that. But man, definitely was a fantasy book. And the thing about fantasy books that sometimes I don't particularly like, and this goes back to being a mood reader, I think, is that they tend to be they become so large, right? So it's not really like Harrow and Wrath are the main couple of the main characters, but like the world is ending, or war is about to break out, or people are about to be extinct. Like everything gets so big, right? And this book got pretty big. I will say the fighting scenes really good, and I have fighting scenes got to be so difficult, especially fighting scenes with magic involved. Difficult. I liked that the author stuck to their own magical rules, because sometimes you read, you know, about a magic fantasy world and they have set rules, but then as you're reading the book, the rules kind of just, you know, or the chosen one, the rules don't matter to them. They they don't impede, haha, chosen one. I will say, I do like the chosen one trope. I think it's overdone a lot, but when it's done well, oh, it's so good. But it just has to be done well, you know? And that, it's kind of one of those tropes like enemies to lovers. It's a thin line, right? Between good and cringe. So the thing I really wish didn't happen was, so in this world, it's elemental magic, right? And there's different immortal goddess queens that are like the queen of water, queen of, you know, stuff like that. They were in this book a lot. Like, it did feel kind of like Deus Ex Machina kind of a thing, because like they're in this book a lot. And like the big bad guy, right, didn't show up. We didn't know about, like, didn't show up until like the third act, and they didn't go looking for our main characters. Our main character went looking for them and tried to kill them, you know. So I'm like, huh, okay, all right. Like, it got a little weird, not in the sense of like, oh, these rules don't make sense, but it got a little weird, like, huh, so Harrow really did nothing in this book. She didn't do jack shit, huh? Like, nothing. Like, I liked it, but that's why I gave it a 3, because afterwards thinking about it, I'm like, wow, she really didn't, I mean, she got herself some, but other than that, like, she didn't really do anything. You know, because the third act conflict, you know it's coming. You know it's coming from the beginning. So when it happens, you're like, yeah, how it happened was interesting. Well, I'm going to say this because it doesn't really have, it's a little spoilery, a little bit, but just kind of explaining what I mean when I say Harrow doesn't actually do anything. So at one point, you know, Wrath and Harrow together, and the Queen of Water drags Harrow to her from her dream. She's sleeping and she drags her to have like a conference. And the Queen of Water basically info dumps on Harrow and exposes like the big third act conflict, right? That we knew was coming. So the Queen instigates the third act conflict. Okay. And then when Harrow realizes her mistake, another queen, I think Queen of Air, like basically shows her what a mistake she made. Because like, okay, Wrath did horrible things. He doesn't remember, but like he was enslaved to do those horrible things, right? So even when the Queen of Water is like info dumping, it still sounded like the Queen of Fire forced him to do these things, even from the info dump from the Queen. So the fact that Harrow doesn't pick that up, even though she's like in love with the guy, was like, oh, okay. All right. Not the smartest cookie, but no one said she was. Fine. Fine. We need the third act conflict to happen. That's fine. Okay. You know, I'll let that go. No big deal. We got to get from A to B. Okay. Then when the Queen of Air basically tells her the same thing, just emphasizing he didn't have a choice, she realizes her mistake and she wants to make it better. And the Queen of Air basically does nothing. Like, the Queen of Air is only in there to tell her, like, oh, what you did was wrong. And I'm like, Harrow couldn't have come to that on her own? Because, like, it was weird because all the clues were there for the third act conflict. So I thought Harrow was going to get to that. Or Wrath was going to remember and feel guilty, you know, and explain it in the wrong way, like miscommunication. So I thought that was going to happen. So the fact that, like, outside godly forces kind of pushed the narrative forward, I was a bit like, oh, that's a little disappointing. Because the writing is great. So I was like, okay, I don't think the author needed to do this. I think their writing, you know, like, that was weird. That was weird, you know? It was unnecessary, and it felt like Harrow and Wrath had no agency over their own story, right? And then Queen of Water shows up again, and Harrow's like, you manipulated me. And I was like, okay, cool. So the Queen of Water is like a manipulative bitch. All right, let's have fun with this. Okay. And then all of a sudden the Queen's like, I'm so sorry. And I was like, wait, what is happening? Like, you know, And like it just completely slipped, like it did slip Harrow's mind that the Queen of Water admitted to torturing Wrath for like 40 years. But like she didn't focus on that part. Like it was just weird. And then, you know, Wrath goes and on basically a suicide mission, and the gods won't help her, but then Wrath gets recaptured, re-tortured, re-enslaved, and he is... Okay, this is a little spoilery, so if you don't want to know, skip ahead, because this is kind of an important part, but I thought it could have been do so much better to put this book at like a 5 stars, even for me, who doesn't necessarily like fantasy as much. So, okay. Wrath is re-enslaved, and the Fire Queen orders him to kill Harrow. He goes to kill Harrow, but this isn't the first time, and he fought it before. So in this conflict, you could see he's fighting the magical compulsion to kill Harrow, and I was like, oh, this is going to be such a great scene. But then, you know, I really thought like their love, because it's, you know, romance and love first. I thought their love would help him break through the enchantment, the enslavement, and, you know, and I thought, oh, that'd be so great because they did it. He broke through the enchantment before for her, so he could do it again. But like the Queen of Water sweeps in, takes him, you know, away, fixes him. The bad guy, the Queen of Fire, I guess, is the bad guy in this, is handled off page. You know how much I hate that. You know how freaking much I hate that. He gets returned again, no memory, so they start fresh, and it's a good ending. Okay. So in that scene, I just felt like he could have broke through the enchantment. Like their love is stronger than enslavement magic. I thought that would have been great, you know, because then also gives them agency in this story, because wow, they really did like nothing. They were just like swept along in this tide of this war between these queen sisters that Water started. The Queen of Water started, you know what I mean? And hundreds, thousands have died because of this petty shit, right? And so I was just like, what is happening? Because it's one of those things, like, this is going to be a weird segue, but stick with me. I have a reason for saying this. You know, in the Vampire Diaries show, how when the original showed up, they kind of overshadowed the original cast and what it was originally about until they got their own show, right? That's what it felt like. When the queens actually showed up, it kind of swept the story along into something else. And like Harrow and Wrath were kind of like, almost felt like secondary characters in the middle of this book, which that shouldn't have happened. And like looking back on it, there was like no agency. The only time they kind of had a choice or did something was when Wrath originally broke through the enchantments before he even showed up in the book. So we don't really even see that until a flashback. So it just felt so weird. It was like the queens just took over, fixed everything, and Harrow and Wrath didn't have to do anything. Wrath got tortured again, but oh well. So it was weird in that sense. I feel like if Harrow and Wrath was able to break his enslavement with their love, I would have been like, oh, cute, a little corny, but cute. Friendship is magic, yay, you know, cute. But no, it's just like Deus Ex Machina. Don't worry, we'll fix it, kids. And then it was like fixed off page. And I was just like, because this was it. The story up until this point, there were some rocky moments, but like I was enjoying myself. So that kind of brought it down from like a 4, a 5. Because like looking back on him, I was like, who was the bad guy? There's no, like the ringmaster bought him from flesh traders and then kept him in a cage and like beat him. And I'm like, okay, he's the bad guy. But then he's like, not really. Oh, just kidding. And I was like, there needs to be a clear bad guy in this, at least at some point. And it can't just be the immortal goddess Fire Queen, because what the hell? Because we don't see them get taken down. You know what I mean? So it was just odd in that sense. And I was like, up until this point, I was having fun. So I think the queens just took over the story, and Wrath and Harrow had no agency. They were just going along with the tide. And I was like, what the hell's happening? So I wish that was different, because other than that, their romance was really sweet and the happy ending is really lovely. The fighting scene's great. I like the world building, fantastic. I think it's just the author got stuck in this world of mythos, and all of a sudden these queens took over. I think if maybe it just stopped at like the Queen of Water trying to manipulate Harrow through her dreams, I think that would have been, but never showing up, never fixing anything. I think that would have been more interesting because it shows like she would have made a choice. You know what I mean? So like it would have felt like she had some kind of say in her life, in her destiny. So, it's 3 stars. And if you like romantasy, give it a try because I don't even like it. And I don't even like that genre very much. And I gave it a 3 stars. So if you're a fan of it, you'll probably love it. You know, you're probably like, what the hell is she talking about? But there we go. And then the next book is Someone to Romance, a Westcott novel, book 4 by Mary Balogh. Brandy reads, hey girl. She was like, oh no, I think it's pronounced below. And I was like, thank you, because I have no idea how to pronounce it. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much. This is also a 3 stars. It's a historical romance. And it's so funny that I forgot the main girl's name because her name is Lady Jessica. And I forgot that, which is hilarious because my name is Jessica. So that's ridiculous. And the main guy is named Gabriel. So 3 stars. Now, I liked their romance. I liked Lady Jessica, how she was logical, how she didn't want to be seen as just the Duke's sister. She wanted someone to want her and not just as like an ornament or, you know, prestige, you know? I liked her extended family. I liked her half-brother, stepbrother, who's the Duke. You know, I really enjoyed, and I like that she was logical. Like, because at one point she was able to take clue A, clue B, and get to the correct answer of, oh, the answer is C, and she was correct. And I really like that, right? I did. And it's not just because she's a fellow Jessica, but I really did enjoy that. Gabriel, he was fine. A little forgettable. The fact that he held on to his secret way too long. Like, everybody knew. The reader knew. Jessica knew. Her freaking brother that looks always half asleep knew. Their, like, second cousin knew. Like, everybody knew except the villain. And this had a very clear villain, which I liked. And we got to see the villain taken down on page, which I like. You guys know me, bloodthirsty. I like that. So, Gabriel is basically, wait, how long ago was this? Because I don't want to give too much away. Just one second. And this is, like I said, book 7. So I think, and I never like heard of her, the author, before, and she has a long, look at all these titles she wrote. And I'm like, damn, all these books. So I definitely have to check her out a little bit more. Her style did remind me of kind of the older romance novelists who you know, started in the 80s, 90s. That kind of style reminded me of her. This book is 2020, so I'm going to do spoilers. Okay. When he was like 16, he got falsely accused of the R word and murder. So he fled to America, where he took on his uncle from his mother's side's last name and built a life for himself and all that stuff. He came back because his, I don't remember, the relation is more complicated. His like grandmother's sister, or his mother's sister, I'm just gonna call her his aunt, who is disabled. She's getting kicked out of the cottage because he's about to be declared dead because he's been gone for 7 years. And so not 16, but he was young, 19. I don't know. He was young, and his second cousin or something is gonna be given the title, and the second cousin's kicking her out. So then he comes back to England to stop that, take his inheritance, you know, claim his inheritance, and stop her from being kicked out, which is sweet. But also, reading it, I was like, what about all the people that, like, live on that land, those farms, all the other people? He doesn't think about them. He does later. And I do enjoy his growth. I like that he realizes the burden he has inheriting and all the like what he owes the people that live on this land and how he hates what his second cousin's going to do, which is basically kick them all out, you know, make them homeless and jobless. So at least he gets he realizes his responsibility that way. And I do enjoy watching like a character grow. Like that's part of the books, right? But he was a little forgettable other than that. And he just held on to secret too long. He's like, I have a secret. And I was like, everybody knows, bro. Everybody knows. Everybody. I do like their romance. I like their banter a lot. And like I said, this is book 7. So I think if I read the other Westcott books, I would have adored this because it did check in on the other characters from past books just to kind of like peek in, see how they're doing. And they didn't take over the story. They were part of the story because their family is very like invested, involved and supportive of each other, right? So that was, I'm sure if I read more Westcott's books, I would have loved that, right? But since it's book 7 and I haven't read it, I was a little confused, which makes sense because you can't recap every single story from all the past couples in there. This book would be like 700 pages. So like I got that, right? So I understood. Because like not a lot of people will pick up book 7 every, that's just me. Anyway, so that was cute. Her family was cute. Because he doesn't have family. So that he's, except his Aunt Mary. So all the whole Westcott clan took him in open arms, took his aunt in with open arms. So that was really sweet, right? Again, I like their banter. I like the ending. But one thing I really enjoyed, right? So he got framed and he figures out who does it and he confronts them. But like the men in her family is like, you're not going alone. What are you, an idiot? You're not going alone. We're going to be there. We're going to be hidden in the bushes. It's going to be a whole thing. Okay. And like he confronts the guy, but then he turns his back on him and walks away. And I was like, idiot, you turned your back on like a guy that you think shot someone else in the back. What are you thinking? And I love that part because one of her relatives, I forget who it was because there's so many of them, tackles him, like flying tackles Gabriel to the ground, like as he's like, don't turn your back on him, you know, basically calling him an idiot in like proper aristocrat British, right? And the comeuppance, I was like, yeah, that's fair. You know, what happens to the bad guy? I was like, that makes sense. That's fair. You know, good for him. The girl's father who was R-worded and her older brother who was killed, that he was the boy that was killed. Their father kills the bad guy. And I was like, fair. And then all of them, all the Westcotts who were all titled and all have a lot of power, especially Jessica's brother who is a duke, was like, you're not going to serve a day in prison. You know, and he doesn't, you know what I mean? Okay. So like, I enjoyed it. It's just, again, there's a lot of introspection. That's right. That's why I didn't like love it. Half of the chapters, maybe not half, but it felt like half of the chapters were like introspection. Like they would have an interaction and then like Jessica would be like, I don't know what that means. Why am I acting like this? Why does he do this? Like almost every chapter, it felt like they were having an internal therapy session about their motivation. And I get that. Like every once in a while, romance novels have that. And it's usually like once or twice in a book and they come to a realization. And then, you know, all's good. Like, they were fighting the romance and they really, you know, like, But this just seemed like it happened a lot. So I found it a little boring that way. And it was just a little annoying how long Gabriel was putting off telling the truth. Because in the book, we kind of had this hard deadline, right? I think it's like 2 weeks before he's declared dead and those people are thrown out, right? And then here he is, going to balls, wooing Jessica, and you're just like, because you don't really know how much time is passing, how closer we're getting to that 2 week deadline, because the book doesn't really track it like that. So I'm like, oh my god, those 4 people. Oh my god, Gabriel, you're such a selfish ass. Like, it was like that. Like, that's when I was reading, I was like that. So I think the timing is a little off, and too much introspection. That could be just her style, you know? I think I'll have to check out another one of her books. The Westcott seemed like a fun family, so maybe I'll check out actually one of the earlier ones, not book 7. See what that's about. But yeah, so this week has just been a week of 3 stars, which is not bad. Not bad at all. So I don't want to, but it's time for me to get back to the real world. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye. Hey guys, welcome back to the Forgetful Scholar, and this week is going to be a little different. This week I'm going to do a library haul because honestly I didn't feel like reading